Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Chris. Hey Bryan, Chris from Neural Glitch. I was hoping to hear your thoughts on a song off our new album. You're the best reaction guy in the biz. I love your opinion. Thank you. You all may recognize the artist name as we did check them out about a year ago, maybe a little less than, but it was certainly 2025 if I remember correctly. It was a very maximalist, lots of layers, lots of things going on, electronic, metal, hybrid, very impressive is what I remember from it. Also very overwhelming. This new album is called Hypnotic Impairment, where the bolded letters read "not AI." I guess the band or artist got a bit of flack for creating what people thought was AI music, and they're here to set the record straight, it seems. Let's dive in, see what's going on with the track Fractured Thoughts. A fun little bit of pitch shifting there.
Let's stop for a second.
Very cool, taking that original melody and tossing it on an electric guitar here. Oh, that bass coming in hard there. Vocals are pretty far into the mix. It's tough to make them out most times. Bringing the intro guitar line back. Ooh. It feels very swirly, but also very directed too. I think the swirling is the production, whereas the composition reminds me of stuff like Dream Theater, honestly. It's this cool push and pull with like time feel.
It's not stopping.
I want to stop!
It's not stopping.
It's not stopping.
It's not stopping.
It will never stop.
Just hearing the laser sounds overlaid against these aggressive guitars and growling, it kind of cracks me up. An interesting fade out there. Scooping out the low end, particularly on the snare. Yeah, I'm just gonna kickstart the discussion here. If anyone actually levied this accusation that this was AI, I have no idea where they would pull that from. Most of the AI music, well, actually, let me rephrase that. All of the AI music I have heard is remix. I have not heard any AI generated music that is new. By definition, it is an LLM. It's designed to figure out patterns and then build things off of those, build things that make sense based off of what it's been trained on. It can really only make more of what it knows. AI can't create. Not at this point, anyways. Not with, we call it AI, but there's not any intelligence there. It is a predictive machine. And so all three tracks I've heard from Neural Glitch are incredibly fresh. And I'm going to say it right here. This song, I think, appeals to me a little more. The over-the-topness has been brought down just a little bit, and that certainly helps me enjoy it a bit more. But all the growling and the just wall of stuff going on. There is so much happening at every moment. It is, I think, balanced in some way, but it is still very overstimulating for me. So between the general metal sounds and the overstimulation, I don't think this is my cup of tea in particular. There's still lots of cool things I want to touch on in it, and I did enjoy elements of it. But, for all of that, it is still really fresh, really inventive. I can't say I've heard anything like it from anyone other than Neural Glitch. So I don't understand how someone could listen to this and think, yeah, this is generative, iterative AI slop. Like, no, dude, this is new. This is fresh. It's also, as I mentioned, a lot. I enjoyed the beginning of this. Very chill, relaxed, cool guitar work. The bass, I don't think we got the bass on this first time hearing this intro, like acoustic. I don't know if it was acoustic guitar or clean electric. But we didn't have bass there. But the second and third time that we came to this section, we certainly had lead bass lines in here, and they were just very cool against this sort of laid back sound. There is still an abrasion element in the timbre of it. It is rather large for what I would expect the instrument to be, and I think that's one reason why I can't quite remember if it was acoustic guitar or clean electric, is mostly the size of the instrumentation. I think the timbre reminded me of acoustic, but the size of it made me think it was electric. Regardless, it's chill, it's laid back. It's got this beautiful semi-classical element to it. I think it's still rooted primarily in rock chords, but a little bit of a leaning towards the classical side. Just very tasteful drum work that goes along with it. And then there's the layers, which weren't quite overdone, but we were beginning to be introduced to some of these vocal samples that are going on in here. It isn't long until this melody ends up on a distorted electric guitar, though. The drums come in, the bass comes in, the growling eventually comes in. We don't get it right at the start, but there's so much going on here. And if we just look at the metal stuff, we have a faster moving guitar riff, we have a melodic bass line, we have drums that don't understand what a drum pattern is. I say that with as much love as I can. The drummer on this is just constantly switching up their flow, their cadence, their pattern. The fills themselves seem to come rapidly. There's usually some sort of key beat that keeps the groove in the background, but by no means is the drummer ever just locked into an idea. I feel like the drummer is always reinventing the drum pattern itself, keeping some key accented beats in order to keep the groove going, but modifying the entire pattern as we progress through the track. And I feel like more often than not, it's the drummer who leads the transitions with drum fills into new ideas. But the drummer's just constantly going, not really stopping at all in here. The guitars are going, the bass is going. The vocalist is, well, the growls are there. They're a bit pushed into the mix, more so than I would expect. Not too odd for metal in and of itself, but I think it's been a while since I've heard vocals this quiet compared to the instruments. Again, metal does this. I've certainly heard bands who prefer this type of production, but it's just been a while, and I kind of, it's been a sound that I'm like, yeah, sometimes metal does this, but it's not something that I've heard recently for me to like have a sonic imprint of it. And hearing, I'm like, dude, the vocals are so low. I think like when I have all these gaps between hearing vocals just really tucked into the mix and I hear something like this again, it's always kind of shocking until I hear this frequently, which I hope I don't because I'm not a big fan of the production style. But until I hear it more frequently, I think it will always kind of shock me just how quiet the vocals can be compared to instruments and still be heard. I can't make out any enunciation in the vocals here. I would need more volume there, and it's growling at that, so I might have some issues anyways, but it's just incredibly quiet. But they don't really stop either. They're consistent. As much as it kind of turns into this white noise-esque element in this track that's at the center of this song, surrounded by all of these instruments, I can kind of make out the sound of some growling. Not words, don't really hear too much of the voice, but I can hear that compression, that natural compression that humans can make. I can hear that at its core. This part, just the metal part, is already very large, loud, and stimulating. There's a lot of moving parts in here, and the speed keeps everything at a brisk pace. So just on the metal side, this is already intense. Then we got to bring in the electronic side though. First of all, the samples. All of the people talking about stopping, please stop, why won't it stop, and everything else. There must have been 20 or 25 different voices that I heard. It really intrigues me how people find all of these clips. Now they could be self-made. They could have went and got a bunch of friends to just record these lines. But when it comes to electronic artists, and even metal at that, samples tend to come from film and television. We've listened to a lot of metal music that has samples from prominent films. So I'm going to wager someone just has this encyclopedic knowledge of films where somebody says, why won't it stop? Or please stop, or some extent of I'm not enjoying this with the word stop in the sentence somewhere. And they just went and found every single sample they could, and they put it into this track in a rhythmic, semi-melodic way. It's actually really interesting listening to how all the different timbres and pitches for these kind of create a sort of an extended hocket. Usually hockets would work with smaller chunks. These are full, almost a full bar worth of information from each of these samples, but it still kind of creates that feeling where you're getting this larger idea chopped up into smaller pieces that a different sound is delivering. But beyond that, we also have some synths in here that are, half of them are just filling out the sound sphere. As if the metal band wasn't big enough, here's more chords. But we also have synths doing little ostinatos, little ornamental ideas, just all these little pieces jumping all around the track, adding more things happening at any given time. And the final piece is the, I don't know if they're higher pitch growls or if they are fry screams. There is a second harsh vocal style in here, and it is modulated so much. It gets panned back and forth. There's a delay on it. You might hear one, you'll hear it in the center, and there'll be bop, 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 bop. And that scream, it won't get quieter. It'll just keep bouncing around. And it almost turns the vocal delivery, the scream, into a sonic texture that can be modified and put into a rhythmic idea. I mean, this is like electronic 101, right? Find a sample and turn it into a beat, or find a sample and turn it into a melody. And that's exactly what we get out of this. I just don't think I've ever heard it done with a scream like this. Now, I come from a post-hardcore background, and post-hardcore certainly danced around with electronic music a lot back in the day. I'm sure I've heard an instance of this. I just can't think of it off of the top of my head. But screaming over electronic instruments and keyboards is something that I'm kind of lightly familiar with. And I don't know if anyone can think of something like that in the post-hardcore area, or like electronic core or something like that. Crabcore especially started to play around with electronic stuff too. I'm kind of interested if anybody has a song that they think I might be remembering right now. Anyways, though, it's integrated in this track way deeper than I've ever heard. And that's the point I want to make here. It isn't just a one-off idea to do during a cool electronic breakdown or a dance section in the middle of a track or something like that. It is a core element of this song. It is frequently engaged with different types of delays, panning, modulation, pitch changes, rhythmic effects. Every time harsh vocals come in, sometimes you'll just get them straight. Sometimes they'll be chopped up and create rhythms. Sometimes you get melodies out of them. It's really interesting to hear how all of this occurs. And like I said, this is like electronic music 101. You just don't hear it within metal sounds. You don't hear people sampling metal too often to play in their electronic music. So that's just, to me, it's very cool. It's very fresh. It is also impressive because I don't have the skills for this. But like I said, I also understand that as far as the idea of taking something and then making something melodic or rhythmic out of it, this is just typical for electronic music. Now the song does have highs and lows though. As I mentioned, we do frequently return to this intro section of the track with more ideas later. And in fact, I love the bass work when we revisit it. I've already mentioned that. There is a variety of intensities too. We certainly have peak intensity of the screams, the growls, the electronic stuff, the massive guitars, the melodic bass, the drums that are doing weird things, maybe even a push and pull, as I mentioned at that one time where we focused on eighth notes to feel like we were driving, and then the next bar we kind of played a halftime feel, so it feels like we're trying to rein it back in, and then we're back to the eighth notes, feels like we're got all this momentum again. So on top of all of the composition in each of these individual phrases, we have this back and forth rhythmic going on too. It is a lot stacked on top. These are the intense moments. And then we have stuff like the intro, the acoustic guitar, a bass, very light drumming, very minimal in its intensity. But the track isn't just focused on bouncing between these two extremes. It rides the waves. It goes through all of these. There's varying levels of intensity throughout this track. There's sections that feel more metallic. In fact, that second section didn't have a lot of the electronic components in it yet. It was just sort of an aggressive guitar riff based off of the intro guitar riff with some drumming and some bass work. Very straightforward metal stuff. So that's a way of kind of ramping up until we hit that peak where we have all the electronic stuff alongside it. There's also some sections in here that felt very electronic. I don't know what subgenre of electronic music it was, but kind of focused on like a core 4 on the floor with something dancey and light to it. A huge contrast to the heavy intensity of other parts of this track, but certainly not something as quite chill as the intro guitar part. It still has a lightness to it though, a positivity that feels contrasty to the heavy stuff. So it's kind of a midpoint between the super chill and the super heavy. This one's energetic, but a positive energy for dancing, rather than moshing and letting out anger. And so this track is just a whole lot of stuff all the time. Let me rephrase that. It's a lot of ideas that are constantly changing, creating something that feels amorphous, constantly growing, expanding, and shrinking back down, more gradual ideas, while reaching these peaks that are just a whole lot of everything all at once. It's a lot. Beyond that, though, I can't really talk more about it. This is something that is incredibly dense. There's a lot going on. It is intense, too, and it would take more listens to have a strong understanding of individual components, aside from the rising and falling actions, the smooth transitions, and the general intense layering going on in here. I can't really tell you what the song is about, what kind of journey I went on while listening to it. Honestly, I was just at the whims of it. Like a good roller coaster, sometimes you slow down, sometimes you got to go up the ramp, or you just got to chill out a little bit before you enter into the last half. And the other half of the experience is being whipped around and doing corkscrews and loop-de-loops and all that stuff. And this song honestly took me for a ride. There were places where I got a moment to catch my breath, but a lot of the times I felt like I was just being drug along, and you know what? I was here for it. I enjoyed my time with it. There's very little out there that is like this. Let me hit some lyrics on this real quick, then we're going to wrap this one up. I don't understand the lyrics. I've read them twice over, and I don't know. I think I'm going to put the blame on me. There's a lot of words here. I don't think it is an issue of brevity, which there's certainly some tracks that, there's like 8 whole lines once you take in the verses and the one chorus that gets repeated. You just can't really tell a deep story with 8 lines of lyrics. And so sometimes I find them to be a bit too vague for me to grasp. This is not that. There's a lot going on here. I'm going to put it on me. I just think I'm not able to decipher what's being said here. The chorus says, fractured thoughts ignite in silent halls. Synapses twist as the darkness calls. I grasp the air, but it bends away. Shadows bloom where the mind should stay. Bones echo with the memory of light, yet every heartbeat bleeds into the night. The world contorts, its edges fray. Sanity whispers, but I cannot stay. It sounds good. Syllabically, there's really good flow throughout this. The rhyme scheme is pretty consistent. We're looking at couplets here. But I just can't see how these lines connect. They all seem to be isolated sentences to me. Like, I don't know, reading a novel. All the sentences have proper syntax to them, but they just don't make sense together. You don't really see the connection of how sentence 2 works with sentence 1. That's what I get when I'm reading this. And like I said, I'm going to put the issue on myself here. Maybe it's possible I'm just missing something. But like we have the idea that grasping at air that bends, but then we talk about shadows blooming. Then we shift to a memory of light, which light bending tends to make more sense than air bending to me. And then it says every heartbeat bleeds into the night. So we have this concept of like light and dark here, of shadows, light, night. Memory is casting a shadow, but the memory is an echo of bones. The bones echo, but the heartbeat bleeds. I don't know. It feels very cryptic to me. And I'm curious if any of y'all who are better at poetic analysis might have made any sense of that chorus stanza there. The rest of this track features stanzas that are fairly similar to that. They're well written, great syllabic flow. They sound nice. The words roll off the tongue. The rhyme schemes work. The couplets and the stanzas just don't make any sense to me. There's one stanza that says, I pace through ruins of a borrowed mind, trading fragments for a piece I will never find. Every truth becomes a blade I hold, cutting futures in the lies I'm sold. Trading fragments of what? The ruins of a borrowed mind is interesting. I don't know what that could represent unless we're talking about some sort of dementia, maybe? Being in a mind that isn't yours or doesn't feel like is yours, but you're currently having it, which would make life or existence feel unfamiliar. But trading fragments of what? Of memories? While they look for peace, but they'll never get it, even though they're trading these fragments away. It says that they have truths. I don't know what truths have to do with any of this other than the fact of unfamiliarity, so maybe the mind is full of lies? It says every truth becomes a blade, cutting futures in the lies I'm sold. That line doesn't make any sense to me. Using truth to cut down the lies that someone tries to sell you does make sense, but cutting futures into the lies? How would truth give a lie a future? Like, I don't know. You would want to end the lie. You would want to cut down its present. So that's kind of how I feel about all of this. It all sounds great, but it kind of turns into word salad for me. It reminds me a lot of, I know I bring this band up almost any time this happens, and I think it's just they're so prolific at this writing style. But it's where the words don't need to make sense, they just need to make musical sense. And old school gong lyrics are like that, where if you just read it as like straight poetry, you're like, dude, this is just word salad. This is nonsense. But it sounds so good in the music. And that's exactly what I get here. Now, I don't want to completely ascribe this reading to the lyrics. It's quite possible that there are intentions behind this, that there are readings to it that are more literal once you get past the figurative language. It just ends up feeling a bit too cryptic for me right now to even have a gut feeling that there's more to it. But hopefully Chris might chime in, and if he's so willing, if you're watching this, Chris, to give your intentions to this. I know some artists like to keep things close to their chest. Art is in the eye of the beholder, and whatever you get out of it is what you get out of it. Some people don't like to ascribe meaning to their art, and if that's where you're at, I totally get it. But if you want to tell me what this song's about, I'm all ears too, because I'm very lost in this. Which, you know, I'm lost in the music too. There's so much happening. So on that hand, my experience with the music and the lyrics are pretty closely tied together. These are my thoughts then on Neural Glitch's Fractured Thoughts. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that fractured thoughts? Maybe that's it. I was talking about this idea that, you know, being in a mind that you're unfamiliar with, but these thoughts do feel fractured to me too, as if this set of lyrics are jumbled up, and maybe if you put them in the right order, it would make more sense. Maybe some of the words would need to be swapped out. Maybe some of these sentences are even conjoined incorrectly. If you swap the last half of one sentence with the last half of another, and you did that multiple times throughout, you might come across something that makes a bit more sense, but it's all fractured in this manner. Very artistic, if that's the way Chris went about doing this. Anyways, that wraps up this video on Neural Glitch's Fractured Thoughts. Let me know what you thought of this, if there's anything in here that you enjoyed, that you like to correct me on, if you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on it. Put all of that and anything else you'd like to into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link for Linktree. Take you here. This is my stuff. Y'all know that. I'm also going to have links for Neural Glitch in here as well. If you want to find more of their music, the website, merch, social media, any of that, you'll be able to find links for that in the description box. If you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. If you head on over to any of Neural Glitch's sites, like, stars, thumbs up, hearts, whatever the metric is, show them some love from the Critical Reactions community. That's going to wrap it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.